Hi guys, it's Shadow. Uploading high-quality audiobooks for you, it's very time-consuming and hard-working process. So please support me so I can keep uploading for you. This is how. You can donate directly through my PayPal or Ko-fi. You will find links in the description. Or you can subscribe for a tier monthly in my Patreon, where you will find many novels there that can't be published here in YouTube due to copyrights. Or you can make a one-time payment to join a Telegram group for a specific novel. You will find the novels list and the price to join in the description. If you can't support me financially, just like and subscribe our videos. Before our audiobook starts, this is a list of our big donors in our Patreon this month. Thank you guys, your support means a lot. And as always, enjoy Shadow. Advent of the Three Calamities. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 410. Reflection 3. The smell of burning incense lingered in the air. Thank you all for coming. I'm Cardinal Francis and I will host the Mass. Cardinal Francis stood by the large auditorium, staring at the numerous cadets sitting opposite him. Garbed in a white tunic, he faintly smiled. I would like to first thank those from Haven who allowed this Mass to happen. Without their help and contribution, none of this would have been possible. Though quiet, his voice managed to reach every corner of the room. The eyes of several students shone at the presence of the Cardinal, who he appeared like a ray of sunshine amidst the darkness that lingered across the dimly lit surroundings. By his side, on either end, stood men clad in white, gripping their necklaces tightly. They were the priests of the Church of Clora. They all stood in silence while watching the Cardinal speak. Among them, a slender man with narrow slit eyes and brown hair blended nicely among the priests. He listened to the entire Mass attentively. However, if one observed closely, one would notice his gaze occasionally drifting toward a specific cadet seated at the front of the Mass. With his blonde hair and pale yellow eyes, Caius was easy to identify. So that's the target. Johann already had enough information on the target. He knew everything that he needed to know in order to capture him. Though he wasn't stronger than a mere cadet, he was confident in capturing him. That was, after all, his specialty. As his eyes flickered, a weird tingling sensation curled around his hand. He looked down to see small black tendrils curling around his arm. Not yet. He placed his other hand over his hand. Not yet. He mumbled quietly, pushing himself back into the row and paying attention to the Mass. Once more. There's another target that I need to look out for. Massaging my face, I sat on one of the benches scattered across the academy campus. As of right now, I was supposed to be in the middle of attending Mass. It was compulsory and I was probably going to get into trouble for missing it, but I didn't really have the luxury of thinking of such matters. What exactly happened in the vision? I was currently torn on the situation. I didn't know which scenario was the correct one. Julian taking over my body and killing someone important, or me killing the target set by Atlas. Logically speaking, it should be the first option. In the vision, I had clearly heard the words he did. Furthermore, it was unlikely that I would get into trouble for killing someone that the cult wanted me to. And yet, Atlas had also mentioned that those from the Church of Clora wore white. Is it possible that something went wrong with the mission? A possibility ran down my mind. Both scenarios happened. I killed the priest, and Julian took over my body. He was the one who killed the priest. Given how I got caught and got into trouble, Julian did the killing in one of the areas that Atlas hadn't labeled as safe. A clear picture of the entire situation was painted in my mind. Although there were a few bits and pieces that didn't make sense, this was the most plausible scenario. This is good. I stood up from the bench, feeling a lot more reinvigorated. Now that I had a direction, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't so lost anymore and I didn't waste another second. I extended my hand forward and a figure appeared over my arm. Another one appeared right beneath my foot. Almighty, Pebble. What is it? Why did you call for us? Pebble looked sleepy as it licked its own paws. The more I looked at Pebble, the more it seemed to act like a cat. On the other hand, Almighty's eyes felt a lot more deep than they had been before. It was almost a noticeable difference. Did Almighty have a breakthrough? That was interesting. I need your help. I want one of you to monitor a certain person. Monitor? Yes. The two were the perfect eyes for me. I want to know their exact location at all times and what they're doing. It should be possible, right? Yes. Almighty answered in its usual deadpan tone. That was when I looked at Pebble. I need you to stay with me. I couldn't communicate with Almighty and Pebble if they were too far away from me. The same couldn't be said for them. For some reason, the two could communicate with each other, regardless of the distance. This was good for me. I could use one of them to relay the information back to me. Wait, why are you choosing him? Pebble suddenly protested, pointing at Almighty. Because Almighty can fly. but I can fit into tight spaces. Yes, but you're also easier to spot. The fact that Almighty and Pebble weren't real animals was not that hard to see if one focused hard enough. Although I didn't think either one would get spotted, Almighty was the safer option. That makes no, it does. Yes. Pebble tried to protest, but Almighty promptly shut all its attempts down. I thought Pebble would start a fuss, launching itself over to Almighty like it usually did. But to my surprise, Pebble just lowered its head in defeat. Fine, Pebble mumbled quietly, kicking the floor with its foot. The scene left me stunned. Since when it learned its place, Almighty spoke from next to my shoulder as its eyes squinted. Pebble will no longer trouble us. Almighty proceeded to pat me on the head with its wings, its beak curling in what seemed to be a smile. I've taken care of the trouble. Oh? The hell? I didn't even know how to react. Flop. I only snapped out of it when Almighty started to flap its wings. I blinked my eyes a couple of times and quickly gave Almighty a picture of the man that Atlas had told me to kill. He should be in the Burman Hall alongside those that worship Goddess Clora. They all wear white, so you'll know exactly where to go if you go up high enough. Wait until the mass is over before following him. Keep me updated on the situation. Okay. Almighty flapped its wing and started to fly away from the spot. I watched as its figure slowly started to blend with the sky before turning my attention to the grief-stricken Pebble. Are you okay? No. Pebble's voice looked to be full of grievances. How the mighty have fallen. In terms of power, Pebble was actually the strongest of the three of us. Its form wasn't supposed to be that of a cat, but because its soul had been weakened so much due to what Aurelia had done back in Elner, it could hardly put up a fight with Almighty. Not to mention that back when he was sealed, he was still just a newborn. Pebble's life was rather pitiful. Not only was Pebble suppressed by a little girl, but by a tree as well. His pride had probably been utterly crushed. You'll recover soon enough. I comforted Pebble while looking at my hand. The stronger I get, the more you'll recover. The situation will reverse when that happens. Don't worry. Not only that, but I would also get stronger. After all, the stronger he became, the stronger step of suppression would become. It was just barely at its base form. Creak. A wooden door creaked as the gentle click of a heel resounded throughout the confines of a small room. Delilah's steps paused right after entering the room, her eyes falling over a figure that sat on the opposite end, his murky white eyes vacantly staring around the room. HM? Sensing her presence, the Pope turned his head. He smiled. It looks like you sensed my presence, Chancellor. Delilah didn't answer and just stared at the elderly man with a blank look. She had sensed his presence from the moment he had entered the academy grounds and had been keeping tabs on him ever since. His strength, while waning, was something that was enough to make her wary. He wasn't stronger than her, but he could certainly cause a lot of trouble if he had the intention to. Perhaps noticing the strange tension that lingered on Delilah's face, the Pope laughed. Haha, there's no need to be so tense, Chancellor. I'm not here to make trouble. Delilah remained silent. It was only after she was sure that there was nothing wrong with the surroundings that she spoke. What is your purpose? Her tone was blunt, devoid of any respect or reverence. She was a non-believer. It was all too boring for her. And for that reason, she had no need to talk herself down under such figures. My purpose? The Pope smiled gently. It's nothing big. I'm only here to check up on Ambrose and see how he's going to do. Then why hide your presence? That would bring a lot more trouble than is needed. Delilah's eyes narrowed. She didn't buy his words at all. If you wanted to do it more quietly, you could have told us about your presence. We would have kept your presence a secret. Furthermore, it would have helped us prepare better. Delilah's eyes started to grow darker. They spun quietly, seemingly trying to suck the Pope in. I know. The Pope remained unfazed, his tone growing gentler. I am sorry for that. It's just that. Closing his eyes, the Pope leaned back on the chair. I don't have much time. Delilah cocked her head. I'm going to die soon. Her eyes returned to normal. Do you? This is probably the last time I'll see Ambrose perform the Mass. I didn't say anything in advance since nobody knows this. Not even Ambrose. By the time the summit is over, The Pope stopped, but his words were clear. Delia's face changed subtly. She didn't seem as wary as she was before. Of course, just because she was less weary didn't mean that she could just leave him alone. They'll be keeping an eye on you. As those words left her mouth, her gaze drifted toward the right corner of the room and her frown deepened. She then shook her head and made her way out of the room. Don't overstep your boundaries. Clank. The door clicked shut, leaving the room in a hushed, motionless silence. Closing his eyes, the Pope leaned his head back. His hands were trembling, but it wasn't out of fear. No, it was out of excitement. Soon, he was going to meet him. He couldn't wait. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 411. Meeting again. 1. Standing before the gathered members, clad in robes of deep indigo, Cardinal Hampshire raised a chalice in the air. In his name, we seek not only the gift of immortality but the wisdom to embrace our everlasting journey. His voice echoed throughout the dimly lit room. In unison, the cadets and priests chanted softly, their voices harmonizing. Mortem, grant us life beyond the grave. In shadows and light our souls you save. Through time's endless weave we rise and we bend. With your boundless power, our spirits transcend. Leon and Evelyn stood next to each other while reciting the chants they had been taught since childhood. Having learned the entire chant from a young age, they knew every line by heart. This wasn't the first mass they had attended. It was also the same for majority of the cadets involved, as none of them struggled to recite the words of the cardinal who lifted the chalice even higher in the air. With each offering, we affirm our bond with the eternal. Embrace the gift of immortality, not as a burden, but as a sacred journey. Mortem, keeper of the unseen door, guide our steps on this timeless shore. With every breath, we seek your embrace. In the dance of the cosmos we find our place. Evelyn and Leon once again chanted. That was when the cardinal brought the chalice down and took a sip of the liquid. I offer this first sip to the god himself, Mortem. May you bestow upon us the gift of health and eternal life. Following his words, the room stirred as the cadets started to move, forming one long and single line that led to the cardinal. It was now their turn to take a sip of the liquid. I don't know about this, Evelyn murmured quietly as she stood in front of Leon while the line before her shortened. Leon blinked his eyes a couple of times and cocked his head. What's wrong? I don't feel like this is very hygienic. We've done this many times before. Yes, but when we were kids. Now that we've grown, I don't know, it kind of feels weird to drink from the same cup as everyone does. If you put it that way, Leon also frowned. However, that was all he could do. It wasn't like he could just move to the side and reject taking a sip from the chalice. It was something that happened each mass and represented one of the many murals found about Mortem. May the next person step forward. Before they knew it, their turn had arrived. Although Evelyn appeared on the fence about the entire situation, she still took a sip of the liquid and left. Leon stepped forward right after she left. He stood face to face with the cardinal, who smiled gently at him and brought the chalice forward. May you be blessed with the blessing of Mortem. Leon nodded faintly and shifted his attention towards the chalice. He hadn't paid much attention to the chalice since the start, but now that he was closer to it, his expression couldn't help but change subtly. Isn't this? Although it wasn't an exact replica of it, the chalice, it was a clear imitation of the chalice he had. This, Leon's eyes shook as he raised his head to look back at the cardinal. What's wrong? The cardinal blinked his eyes, tilting his head as he brought the chalice forward. Leon was quick to snap out of it as he lowered his head and took a sip of the liquid. It was just regular wine. And yet, something within his chest stirred the moment he took a sip of the liquid. He couldn't explain what it was, but it felt warm. Leon held the feeling back and moved back towards the back of the room where Evelyn was. The warm sensation that coursed through his body intensified with each second that passed, and sweat started to pour down from the side of his face. Though he didn't show it on the outside, Leon was inwardly panicking. I need to find a way to get out of here. Something is of CR crack. A loud cracking sound reverberated throughout the entire room. All heads turned, shifting towards the source of the sound, the chalice. Look, one of the cadets pointed at the chalice. It was then that everyone noticed the massive cracks that had appeared all over the chalice. How could this be? The cardinal's face underwent huge changes upon noticing the cracks on the chalice. Long gone was his calm exterior. What replaced it was a flustered look as he brought the chalice away and placed it on a nearby table. CRA crack. Even more cracks formed as the seconds passed. Everyone watched in horror as the cardinal tried to do something about the chalice. However, in spite of his best attempts, the cracks only grew with each one of his attempts at mending the situation. Hurriedly flicking his head to look at one of the priests, the cardinal shouted, "Someone get the..." But it was too late. Bang! The chalice shattered into hundreds of pieces, spilling the wine all over the place. No. Pale in the face, the cardinal looked at the remains of the chalice with a horrified look as he hurriedly scraped and collected the broken pieces. How could this be? This is an artifact that has been passed down for generations. How could it suddenly break down like this? How is this possible? His despair-stricken voice echoed throughout the area. The priests by this side were also showing the same shocked expression as the cardinal. Only they knew just how important the chalice was. Leon looked at the entire situation with a lost look. The warm sensation that coiled around his chest had grown stronger than ever, but even then, he still couldn't understand what had happened. However, if there was one thing that he understood, it was that, in the cause of it, he was the source of the chaos that had currently taken over the area. A sudden throb to his chest broke Leon out of his thoughts as he hurriedly placed his hand over his mouth and hunched over slightly. His face grew paler and his body grew a little weaker. Leon, Evelyn, who was the closest to him, naturally detected the abnormalities with Leon as she started to look worried. Leon held his hand to stop her from approaching. Cage, I'm fine. He wasn't, but he had to be fine. He couldn't show any suspicious movement. Who knew what would happen if they found out he was the one who had caused the entire mess? Should we go? Evelyn's suggestions were what helped him cool his mind. He looked around and saw that several cadets were already leaving. With the priests too preoccupied with the chalice, and the professors present also leaving, Leon nodded faintly. He had to get away from his place. Let's go. And so they did. Are you sure you're fine? Even as they distanced themselves from the sight of the mass, the pain in Leon's chest persisted, intensifying until his face grew even paler. Evelyn forced Leon to stop as she took a closer look at his face. You're sweating a lot. She placed her hand over his forehead. Oh God, it's hot. Evelyn moved away, her expression tightening. You've got a fever. Why did you? I found you. A cool voice broke Evelyn out of her thoughts. When she turned her head, she saw Julian coming in their direction from the distance. Leon also raised his head and looked at Julian, who frowned at the sight of him. What is wrong with you? He has a fever. Evelyn answered in Leon's stead. It looks like he does. Julian didn't doubt Evelyn's words. Leon's complexion said it all. Evelyn once again looked at Leon with a worried look before addressing Julian. Can you bring him to the nurse? He'll go. Actually, I have something I want to talk to you first about. Evelyn blinked her eyes, clearly surprised by Julian's words. You want to talk to me about something? Yes. Julian replied in a very serious tone. His tone was enough to make Evelyn understand that he wasn't joking around. However, turning her attention towards Leon and seeing Leon's complexion, she shook her head. Whatever it is, we can talk about it later. It's best if we bring Leon to the no-go. Leon stopped Evelyn mid-sentence. But go talk with Julian. He'll stay here. I'm going to be fine. If it's just a fever, then it's nothing, since I can just take some pills to heal. In reality, Julian appeared at the right time. Leon couldn't go to the infirmary. He understood best that this wasn't something the doctor knew how to handle. He wasn't sick, nor was he dying. His body was just acting weird after having drunk from the chalice. The chance of the doctor knowing what was wrong with him was almost zero. Furthermore, it could even make things more complicated for him. Leon couldn't afford to let that happen. This was why Julian's appearance was godsent for him. Take her and go, Leon implied with his words. Julian didn't reply but pulled Evelyn by the sleeve. Hey, wait, let's go. Leon doesn't want to go to the nurse, but he's sick. So, the best that can happen is that he'll die. Leon's mouth twitched upon hearing Julian's words. Was it really that hard to be nice to him? No, never mind that. Leon held his head with both hands. He needed to address this issue first. Hey, where are we going? Don't go too far from Leon. If we go too far and something happens to him, then it'll be on you. He's clearly sick and… I know. My ears were on the verge of bleeding as I pulled Evelyn alongside me. Machine gun. She's really a machine gun. I really missed the old evasive Evelyn. This Evelyn just wouldn't stop talking. Did you not see how pale his face was? And the sweat. God, the sweat. The back of his shirt was drenched in sweat, and if you paid close enough attention, you'll notice how his body was also trembling on certain OC. This place is good enough. I looked around before finally letting go of Evelyn. She finally stopped speaking as she looked around. We were in a more isolated part of the academy, at the back of one of the academy buildings. It was only when I was sure that there was no presence near us that I spoke. I need your help. Evelyn looked confused. Her expression seemed to say, my help? What for? I pursed my lips and took a deep breath. Before she could say any words, I spoke. I need you to enter my mind. Evelyn's eyes widened as realization dawned on her. There's someone I need to deal with. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 412. Meeting Again, 2. Evelyn's face flickered with a series of emotions. Her eyes first widened in shock, her body trembling as she instinctively stepped back. But soon, the sharp surprise softened, slowly giving way to quiet acceptance. I could tell from the way her expression settled back to normal that she had already come to terms with the fact that I was no longer the Julian she once knew. It was hence why her voice came out rather calm. Let me guess, he's trying to regain control? Or causing some sort of trouble? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure how to answer. However, my silence was enough for her. You want my help holding him down? Keep him from coming back? Can you do it? Evelyn's brows furrowed tightly as she fell into deep thought. She was probably considering whether to help me out or not. I knew she could do it. I had seen her do it before. To some extent, what truly mattered was whether she was willing to help Menno, a stranger to her, seal away the Julian she once knew. This was the reason why I was on the fence about asking her. Our relationship wasn't very deep. Why would she help me screw over someone that she knew much better than me, and even used to care for? But what choice did I have? I had no choice but to ask her since she was the only one who could help me. Fine. But contrary to my expectations, she agreed to help me. I was a little surprised by her agreement, and as if understanding my confusion, she went on to explain. Don't get me wrong. I'm not helping you because I trust you. I'm helping you because I trust Leon. He seems to trust you quite a bit. That's why he'll help you. And I still feel like something is off with you. Evelyn bit her lips while mumbling, I just don't know how to put it. Feels like I met you before. 11. I remained quiet from that point. I knew exactly what she was referring to by that. I'm surprised she's so perceptive. It looked like she still clearly remembered the previous incidents that had happened when I used the third leaf. I was sure my disguise was perfect, but it didn't seem like my acting had been on point. Furthermore, she had been quite young back then. To think she'd still remember all the details. They'll need to be more careful. Regardless, all that mattered to me was the fact that she was willing to help me. Hold out your hand. As I listened to Evelyn's words, I followed her instructions and held out my hand. She grasped it and locked eyes with me. Let me say this up front. I am not a cleric. My knowledge is limited, so depending on the situation, I might not be able to help at all. In fact, there's even a chance I could make things worse. I'm only telling you now to give you fair warning. Are you okay with that? Yes, I know. This was one of the risks that I had taken into account when getting in contact with her. Had it not been for what had happened before, I would have been hesitant about calling her. However, it really looked like I had no choice in the matter. This was my only way out of the situation. All right then. Evelyn shrugged, pressing my hand against her. Don't tell me I didn't warn you. Her eyes sparkled as faint lightning arcs danced around them. Her hair stirred as if a wind had risen up, sending a jolt of electricity coursing through my body. My entire body jolted under the shock and my mind soon grew dark. By the time I regained consciousness, I was surrounded by darkness. It embraced every part of my body as I looked around. There's nothing. It wasn't so different from the world within the Angel of Sorrow. And as I turned my head, Evelyn appeared beside me. Her expression was a little pale. Are you? I'm fine. Evelyn cut me off, raising her hand subtly and locking her eyes toward a certain direction as her expression tightened. I can feel it. He's not far from here. Evelyn moved on her own, taking a step towards the darkness. I stared at her back before following her from behind. Tack tack. Within the darkness, the sound of our steps echoed quietly as we walked in silence, neither one of us saying a word. Evelyn seemed transfixed by something as she moved in a trance. I didn't know for how long we walked, but soon, a faint light appeared in the distance. It was dim, but within the darkness that surrounded us, it looked blinding. He's there. Evelyn's steps slowed down for a few seconds before hurrying once more. I picked up the pace as well and followed her from behind. As we drew closer to the light, its source began to take shape. It wasn't long before a clear image emerged before us, and we both stopped at the same time. A broken mirror. What appeared before us was a mirror filled with countless cracks. It stood within the darkness, pointed right at us, revealing our reflection. At least that's how it appeared at first. Soon after, a smile spread across my reflection as it raised an arm, wrapping it around Evelyn's reflection. You're here. A cool voice reverberated throughout the darkness. As the gaze of my reflection shifted towards Evelyn's, the smile slowly faded from my reflection. It's been a while, Evelyn. You haven't forgotten about me, right? Instinctively, Evelyn took a step back as her face grew pale. Her reaction brought a smile to my reflection's face as he let go of Evelyn's reflection and quietly moved forward. Evelyn took another step back. Bang. He smacked his fist against the mirror, causing Evelyn to flinch. Get me the fuck out here, you bitch. He screamed, his face twisting and his scream piercing through the silence. Get me out now before I kill you. Cage. In spite of Leon's expectations, the pain in his chest only grew worse with time. He thought, head be able to handle it, but he was wrong. Nah. It came and went in waves, each time becoming more powerful. I won't be able to last at this point. Leon understood the severity of his situation. Without hesitation, he looked around and decided to leave his spot, rushing towards the dorms which weren't far from where he was. Yuka. His chest throbbed once more, halting him on the spot. Unknowingly, as he looked down, he noticed a long silver string moving down from his mouth. Wiping his mouth, Leon rushed forward once more. It took him a total of 3 minutes to arrive at the dorm, where he immediately rushed up the stairs and dashed towards his room, closing the door behind him. Clank. Ark. A scream escaped his lips the moment he entered the room. Hot. Leon felt a sudden itch spreading across his body. He began to strip off his clothes, leaving only his underpants on. Sizzle. Steam started to rise out of his body shortly after that. Ba, thump. A strange pulsing noise followed, perfectly in sync with the beat of his own heart. Leon glanced down and noticed every vein in his body had become visible, standing out beneath his skin. The veins glowed with a faint blue hue, all converging toward his heart, where a dark, shadowy chalice seemed to rest at its center. His face changed. He had seen this scene before more than once, in fact. He understood the meaning behind it all too well, which is why the sight before him now left him so utterly shocked. The wine, Leon mumbled, unable to hide his shock. It actually contained real blood. Mortem's blood. Leon's entire expression shifted. This was the first time something like this had ever happened at such an event, and he couldn't make sense of what was going on. Real blood? But how could it be? Leon had been to several such events in the past, and he had never experienced a situation such as this one. Something was off. How could they serve real blood? And what was the reasoning for the chalice suddenly exploding? Leon had so many questions and yet no answers to them. To make matters worse, the pain came back again. Leon had no choice but to quietly focus on withstanding the pain by taking deep and steady breaths. Sizzle. Steam continued to rise out from his body throughout the entire process. Gradually, the pain began to fade, and the glow on Leon's body diminished as well. The process lasted only a few minutes before everything finally cooled down. Leon was finally able to breathe as he flopped onto the floor. He needed a few minutes to fully recover. By the time he fully recovered, a cool sensation washed over his body as he pressed his hand against his chest and pulled the chalice free. As expected, he looked at the liquid contained within the chalice and swallowed his saliva. It really was Mortem's blood. The chalice had a special power. Although Leon remained uncertain about how the chalice worked, he knew it triggered a unique reaction whenever he consumed Mortem's blood. It created a special liquid that could be consumed. He referred to it as the nectar, and each time he ingested it, his strength surged tremendously. I wonder if it'll have a different effect if I consume a different blood. The thought weirded out Leon for a second before he shrugged and drank the nectar. Swoosh. His clothes fluttered as power surged through his body. Leon's muscles bulged, and he felt his strength starting to rise rapidly. It was a euphoric sensation that left him breathless, but it faded quickly, and his body soon returned to its normal state. Taking another deep breath, Leon prepared to stand up. However, just as he did, his body froze. His intuition tingled, sending shivers down his spine as sweat began to trickle down the side of his face. His breath started to grow heavy as he raised his head to look outside the window. Oh no! He pulled his sight away and hastily stood up. Suddenly, he had a horrible premonition, and he was sure it wasn't about him. I have to go. Leon wasted no time, quickly getting dressed before dashing out of the room. Even after leaving, his intuition continued to scream at him, warning him of an impending crisis. He didn't know what it was, but Leon was sure. Julian, something bad was going to happen to him. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 413. Duality. Chapter 413. Duality. Chaos erupted from the moment the chalice shattered. The priests all picked up the broken pieces of the chalice as they tried their best to find ways to mend it back together. But it was useless. There was no fixing the artifact. It was broken beyond repair. The cardinal watched the chaos in silence. His expression was hard to read, but if one looked closely, they'd notice a certain flicker in his eyes. Cardinal, what do we do? All of a sudden, one of the priests approached him. The cardinal looked their way and shook his head. I do not know. I will contact His Holiness to determine what to do. For now, Collect all the remains of the chalice before I give you further instructions. Understood. The priest left shortly after that, repeating the cardinal's orders. As the cardinal watched the priest disappear from view, he turned and walked in the opposite direction. Upon reaching his personal quarters, he entered and locked the door behind him. Click. The room wasn't anything grand. It had the basic necessities such as a bed, a table, a small window, and a wardrobe. It was a room assigned to him for the short stay. It's been done. His voice gently traveled through the empty room. It was unknown to whom he was speaking as there was no one present. It wasn't until the very fabric of space began to warp, and a hand emerged from the cardinal's shoulder that it became clear. You found the holder? A faceless head materialized beside the cardinal's left shoulder, gently resting over it. The cardinal maintained his expression. We've narrowed it down. So you still haven't the holder? All right. The hand withdrew from the cardinal's shoulder as the faceless figure moved toward the bed. It sat down, crossing its legs and resting a hand thoughtfully on its chin. I'm a little tied up on some matters, but I take it that you have a list of people whom you suspect is the holder of the chalice. Yes, the cardinal nodded. I should be able to find the target by the end of the day. You can. Despite the faceless figure's lack of features, the cardinal could almost sense a wide, sinister smile forming. A shiver ran down his spine, and his body suddenly tensed, frozen in place. However, he was able to quickly recover as he mouthed, Yes, we already have done the test with the chalice that you have given me. There was a reaction. I've compiled a list of everyone who touched their lips to it, and I've taken note of the last person to do so. Now, all that's left is to confirm whether the reaction came from the last person or someone prior. It shouldn't take long to get the results. That's good to hear. The faceless figure happily interlocked its hands together. You're doing well. All you need to do is now find the holder of the chalice. As promised, I'll reward you handsomely for your achievements. Feel free to do as you wish. If anything troublesome comes, you can contact Dawn. Understood. The cardinal nodded his head slowly, trying his best to hide his excitement. It was just as he lowered his head that he noticed the room had grown silent. Lifting his head again, he saw that the room was now empty. The faceless figure had disappeared out of thin air. Who? Letting out a long breath, the cardinal relaxed his shoulders. His back was soaked with sweat, and his arm trembled uncontrollably. Despite his strength, he struggled to breathe properly in his presence. He felt suffocating. I should. As the cardinal turned around, a figure came into view, causing his entire body to stiffen. Before I forget, the faceless man quietly rested his head on the cardinal's shoulder while hanging his other hand by his neck, his tone lowering slightly. Keep an eye out on the Church of Heraclius. I feel the presence of someone that shouldn't be here. I'm afraid things will be complicated if he interferes. Be on the watch out. Okay? By the time the words reached the cardinal, he felt his shoulder lighten as the faceless figure disappeared once more, this time for good. Ha! Plopping onto the bed, the cardinal wiped his sweat-covered forehead. Yais! Where are they? Where? Leon scanned his surroundings, his face pale. Though his strength had increased, his body was still drenched in sweat, and he felt sluggish from the ordeal he had just endured. Still, he pushed the sensation down and frantically looked around the academy grounds. Where are they? Where did they go? His intuition wasn't helping him at all. All it did was send alarm bells into his mind, sending shivers down his body. He felt the hair at the back of his neck raise as his mouth grew dry. This wasn't the first time his intuition had spiraled out of control like this. It had happened several times in the past, and each time he'd faced serious trouble. He understood that this was such a case. The only problem was that the one in danger wasn't him but someone else. Where did they go? To make matters worse, he had no idea where to look for them. He had already contacted them using his communication device, but neither one of the two answered. Damn it! Leon looked around frantically. The cadets were just now leaving the mass, flooding the academy grounds and making things harder for him. Just as Leon was about to despair at the situation, he spotted a certain figure in the distance. Although she was currently disguised, Leon was already familiar with her disguised looks. He headed right for her. Aoife. Aoife froze for a second before shifting her attention towards him. Leon. She seemed relieved once she managed to recognize him. Thinking back, she was probably worried about Kira's revenge for what she did to her a while back. Not that it mattered since there were more pressing issues at hand. Have you seen Julian and Evelyn? Julian and? Aoife blinked her eyes a couple of times, confused for a moment. Her expression seemed to say, Did you just say Julian and Evelyn? Yes, they had something to talk about, but I lost sight of them since I had to do something. It's a bit of an emergency. Aoife frowned, taking out her communication device. However, She soon shook her head. No, I'm just as clueless as you. But it looks like they aren't the only ones that disappeared. I am looking for Kira as well. I can't seem to find her. Kira? Yes. Aoife nodded. She was supposed to meet me here, but it's been over 10 minutes. Do you think something happened to her? For Kira? Leon frowned. Soon, however, his brows shot up as his intuition kicked in again, prompting his entire body to freeze once more. Leon looked at Aoife. I think she might be in trouble. Bang. Are you listening to me? Let me the fuck out. Julian's screams echoed through the void, loud and dripping with malice. Evelyn bit her lip as she stared at the figure trapped behind the mirror, a mix of complicated emotions washing over her face. Bang. Hey bitch, are you even listening to me? Julian's face was twisted, filled with anger and rage as his eyes turned red at the sight of us. I'll kill you. I could only shake my head at the sight of him. He looked so miserable. He's also not very bright. With the way he was behaving, it'd be weird if Evelyn felt tempted to help him. Just by looking at her, I could see rage mixed in her emotions. The more he spoke, the colder her eyes became. He was trying his best to keep himself sealed within the mirror. Oi! Bang! The mirror wobbled, and my eyebrows shot up in surprise. More cracks began to form, spreading across the surface like delicate webs, threatening to shatter it completely. It looked like it was on the verge of shattering. Evelyn's face also showed signs of change as she looked in the mirror. This is more complicated than I thought. Evelyn mumbled, studying the mirror up close. Bang, bang. In the background, Julian continued to shout, but we both made an effort to ignore his words as Evelyn walked around the mirror. Gently, she pressed her hand against the back of the mirror. I see. Evelyn pursed her lips, her expression turning grim. Pulling her finger back, she looked at me. This is not good. My heart sank. Is there a problem? Yes. Evelyn pulled back from the mirror. First things first, I can't really do anything about the situation. I thought that he was sealed using some sort of spell, but that's not the case. Eh? It looks like you're not aware of it. Evelyn pointed at the mirror. The mirror is what's containing Julian's soul. The absence of a basic mana rune means it's not a spell. It's something else entirely. As in, the effect of an artifact. I felt my eyes widened at her words. The effect of an artifact. Whatever artifact was used must have sealed Julian inside. Its effect is wearing off, and if you want to fix this, you'll need to use the artifact again to reinforce the seal. Pinching her chin, Evelyn moved to the side and cast a quick look at the mirror again before mumbling. Judging from how it's a mirror, the artifact might also be a mirror. Do you have anything like that? If you use it again, then you will be able to fix the mess. Oh, I nodded absent-mindedly while moving in front of the mirror. The artifact might also be a mirror? Her words lingered in my mind, echoing loudly as I thought back to one previous experience. A mirror artifact. I had never come across one in my life, but I knew of one. I happened to come across the conversation right after the second play, during the time Kira's aunt appeared. Right, Kira? Although I couldn't feel the beat of my heart, I could imagine it beating loudly within my mind as several pieces started to fall together. As if noticing my change in expression, Evelyn tilted her head. Do you have any idea? Sort of. Oh, that's good. Evelyn stepped back from the mirror. If you can take the me, Kira has it. I mumbled, cutting her off. Evelyn's brows jumped up. Eh? Kira? She mumbled in surprise while looking at me weirdly. She was probably curious as to how I knew and what part Kira had in any of this. I honestly didn't know. However, one thing was certain. I needed to find the mirror she had if she even still possessed it. Without it, there would be no way to reinforce the seal. But that was easier said than done. Even the inverted sky had trouble finding it. How would I be able to convince Kira to give it to me? UHG. I ruffled my hair in annoyance. The situation was turning messier and messier by the second. Do I have to look for Kira now? Will I even be able to make it in time before something crash? Hip. A sudden sharp sound of glass shattering echoed through the void, making me jump in alarm. Lifting my hand emerged from the mirror, reaching directly for my throat. Before I even had the time to react, it grasped it directly. A pair of bloodshot eyes stared back at me. Go you. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 414. Duality 2. It felt like I had been completely deprived of control over my body. The instant his hand touched my throat, I found myself unable to resist in any way. I got you. His dry and cold voice reached my ears, sending shivers down my body. Evelyn yelped from the side. Electric bolts shout out from her body as she quickly shoots them towards the mirror. But, swoosh, it was useless. The mirror absorbed everything. If anything, CRA crack. More cracks formed all around the mirror. Keep attacking, bitch. Looks like you're finally useful for something. This. Evelyn's eyes shook. She looked lost. A magic circle rapidly formed at the palm of her hand, but she wasn't sure whether to use it or not. She alternated her gaze between me and the mirror. Don't do it. I gave a slight shake of my head, hoping she'd understand. She did, as her brows knitted together and her face turned complicated. Couldn't be helped. There was no point in being reckless in this situation. TSK. Julian clicked his tongue while his grip over my throat tightened. She's never been useful in her life. Just when I had hopes. He turned his attention towards me, a smile forming at the corner of his lips. You look exactly like me. It almost feels creepy. No, never mind. What am I even talking about? This is my body we're talking about. No shit, you look like me. Cage. I tried to struggle a few words out of my mouth, but it was no use. His grip over my throat was too tight. I couldn't get any words out. Furthermore, although he was still stuck inside of the mirror with the exception of his arms, I had lost total control of my body. Despite my best attempts at trying to set myself free, I couldn't move at all. It must have been nice, right? Taking over my body and acting like me? I bet everyone looks at you like the better version of myself, right? While I'm stuck here in this darn thing you stripped me of everything. It must have been nice. Julian's eyes flickered and his expression twisted. You seem rather calm despite the situation you find yourself in. Why is that? Because I'm not scared. The words never left my mouth, but I could tell that he understood. That was all it took for his anger to surge. You how fucky yuka. His face spasmed and his grip over my neck loosened. With his other hand, he covered his face while maintaining my grip over my neck, despite it having weakened. What did you do to me? Nothing big. With his loosened grip, I could speak. The edges of my lips curled up as my voice started to layer. Maybe you didn't know, or maybe you did considering that this is your body, but I'm an emotive mage. So long as I can get a word out, I can directly influence your mind. Just like, I raised my hand and pressed it against his outstretched one. Now, Julian's face underwent a significant change, but it was too late. A scream escaped his lips as his grip over my neck loosened. Thump. I collapsed to the ground, quickly glancing at Evelyn. She didn't need any instructions. A spell formed in her hand, and she immediately hurled it toward the mirror. But this time, instead of striking the mirror, the spell wrapped around it, creating a protective barrier. Since she couldn't affect the mirror directly, she conjured another barrier, layering it over the first. This second shield would serve as an extra layer of protection that would block Julian even if he managed to get out of the mirror. But Evelyn's face grew pale the moment she threw the spell. She had clearly expanded a lot of her energy creating the spell. Thud. Dropping to the ground, she started to breathe heavily. I was doing better than her, taking a few breaths before recovering and standing up. Bang. Amid the tension, the mirror trembled, sending out a loud, echoing bang that reverberated through the voice. Get back here? What followed after was Julian's hoarse and crazed voice. You useless bitch. Get me out of here. Give me my fucking body back. Bang bang. Give it back. It's mine. It's mine. Bang. Evelyn made an effort to ignore his screams and looked at me. I don't know for how long the spell will last. Your best bet is to find the artifact and deal with the situation. I'm at my limit with this. Yeah, I figured. I was already thinking of a way to talk to Kira about the mirror. Did she know where it was? Even if she did, would she lend it to me? Pursed my lips. I was honestly unsure if she would, but what other choice did I have? Looking at the mirror and the cracks that formed all around it, I knew that I couldn't waste time hesitating over the matter. I had to find Kira and figure out a way to get her to give me the mirror and help me. But for now, I need to get out of here. The place was already feeling too stuffy for me. Bang. Where do you think you're going? Sensing that we were preparing to leave, Julian grew increasingly frantic. He began pounding on the mirror with greater intensity, his voice turning more hoarse with each desperate shout. Stop. The desperation was palpable in his voice. Bang bang. I moved my gaze away from him and looked towards the barrier that Evelyn had set up around the mirror. You said it won't last for long, but DOD, you have a specific amount of time? No. Evelyn shook her head with a complicated expression. Could last an hour, maybe two. Or it could stop him for only a few minutes. If it were a spell. Sealing him, I could reinforce it, but as things are, once he's out of the mirror, he'll be able to break through the barrier quickly if he knows how. That's why I can't put an estimate to it. I see. So we needed to hurry up and find Kira. Understood. I felt an increased sense of urgency in the situation. Without any further delay, I stretched my hand forward and Evelyn grasped it. Bang bang. Come back here. Are you listening to me? Come back here. Julian's twisted and hoarse voice continued to echo in the background while a familiar sensation coursed through my body, making every muscle in my body tingle. Before I know it, my eyes flared open and light entered my eyes. Oof. I struggled to adjust to the light as I squinted my eyes a couple of times. It was a little overwhelming after being surrounded by the darkness for so long. Did Julian live in such a world for so long? His desperation made sense. Not that it mattered much to me. He was a threat that I needed to deal with. I had no sympathy for him. Are you going to find Kira directly? Overhearing Evelyn's words, I nodded faintly. Yes, although I don't necessarily know where she is right now. Even though I didn't know where she was, I didn't think finding her would prove very difficult. My only problem was finding a way to convince her. Okay then. Evelyn still seemed a little shaken up by what she saw. Though she tried her best to keep herself composed, she couldn't hide the faint trembling of her shoulders and pale face. Reading the room, I planned to step away from her when all of a sudden, I felt the corner of my lips curl. Ah, what intage, nice. My mouth opened on its own as my head turned to look around me. It's so nice. Still nothing? 10 minutes had passed since Leon began searching for Julian and Evelyn. But despite checking several common areas, they still couldn't find them. No, nothing. I can't even find any trace of Kira. Aoife's brows were furrowed tightly as she scanned the surroundings. The situation felt a little odd to her. Where did Julian and Evelyn go? And what about Kira? Weren't the two of them supposed to meet here by now? Did something happen to the three of them? No, that didn't quite make sense. The security was extremely tight due to the 7 church gathering. The chances of something happening to the three of them weren't very big. But it's also not impossible. It was after all an academy. They were an educational institute. Their strength could hardly measure up to a powerful, noble house. Still, if something did happen, I'm sure there would be a reaction by now. Since that's the case then. Overhearing the strange noise that came out of Leon's mouth, Aoife turned her head to see him staring into a certain direction where 2 figures were coming. She blinked a couple of times before finally looking relieved. They're here. Although Aoife was still puzzled by how the 2 of them had disappeared together. Given how strained their relationship was, she felt relieved that her concerns had turned out to be unnecessary. No big problem had occurred at the academy. Where have you 2 been? We've been looking for you all over the place. Aoife was the first one to approach. Leon stood behind her. You were looking for us? Evelyn looked surprised at first before turning her head to look at Leon. We weren't far from the place you left us off. We went to look for you, but you were gone. That? Leon scratched the back of his head. I left only for a short moment. I came back, but I couldn't find you. Whatever. Evelyn shook her head before recalling something. Right, do you guys know where Kira is? Kira? Aoife looked a little surprised. However, she soon shook her head. No, I've been looking for her as well. She did? Evelyn's brows furrowed tightly as she mumbled. That's a little troublesome. Troublesome? Why? Do you need something from her? No. Evelyn pointed her thumb back. Not me but him. It was then that Aoife shifted her attention to Julian, who looked at her with a strange look. Was subtle, but enough to make her feel uncomfortable. Is it just me? Evelyn didn't seem to notice though. Dismissing his expression, Aoife asked him, Is it urgent? You can say so. Julian replied calmly, his eyes flickering slightly. There's something I have to do with her help. He turned his head toward Leon, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Something that involves getting rid of an annoying pest. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 4:15. Duality 3. Veltris, shaper of earth and sky, breath of life, the creator of all. Clank. Nah. Kira entered her dorm room. Her face was pale and her breathing was rough. Entering the room, she turned on the light and wobbled her way in. She felt dizzy, her vision swaying from side to side, as if she were on a boat caught in the midst of a stormy sea. Kira felt drunk and lost. She didn't say a word and simply scanned the room with her eyes. His presence is elusive, barely leaving his name etched in the canals of history. His blood begets fire, but his fire rages on. From within his flames arise his creations. A faint voice whispered in Kira's mind as she made her way toward her bed. Sweat poured down from her face as images flashed across her mind. They were posters. Posters that the cardinal himself held while pointing at them. It is not his blood that we seek, but his creations. The chalice of collection. Bang. Kira shoved the bed to the side. The extractor of containment. Her eyes instantly locked onto one of the wooden planks beneath the bed. It was slightly looser than the others. She quickly loosened the plank further and moved it to the side, revealing a small black box. Kira trembled at the sight of the box. It had been a while since she had last seen it. Oracle's eye. Reaching out for the box, Kira's hand started to tremble. The cardinal's words echoed once more in her mind as she carefully lifted the lid of the box. And lastly, the astral mirror. Click. These are the 4 holy relics of creation. Veltris masterpieces and the key to stopping the expansion of the mirror dimension. Nestled within a fold of red cloth, a simple, cracked mirror lay inside the box. It seemed ordinary at first glance, yet it's the same. It was the same as the image within one of the posters the cardinal displayed during the mass. It was only now that it fully dawned on her. The reason for her aunt's obsession with the mirror and why she would even go as far as kill her mother for it. Kira knew it was important, but she didn't know it was one of the 4 holy relics of Veltris. The astral mirror. So this is how the outside world looks like. Julian blinked his eyes and calmly observed his surroundings. Although there were many things that he wanted to do, he kept his cool and looked at Leon. Is this how he normally looks like when someone isn't putting him in his place? Leon. How could he describe him? He looked different than how he knew him. He looked relaxed, and there was no tension on his face. He looked so different than the Leon he was accustomed to. This didn't sit well with Julian. How could a knight of his look like this? Who would he intimidate like this? And how would a relaxed knight even protect him? This won't do. They'll have to fix him back into shape soon. But there was a time and place for everything. Julian held himself back knowing that this wasn't the right time for him to do so. He first needed to get used to his body again. So, are you going to look for Kira? Turning his head, Julian looked at Evelyn. His lips twitched, forcing whatever words he was about to shout at her down. He didn't quite know who Kira was, however. He had been paying attention to the conversation before. Mirror. She was the one in possession of the special relic that sealed him into that space. Clench. Julian secretly balled his fists. So long as I get my hands on that mirror, I'll be able to reverse the situation. It would only be when he was sure he had full control of his body again and got rid of the pest, that he would finally reveal himself. Before then, yes, I'll try to look for her. Julian held himself back. 11. Faint cracks emerged in my vision, stretching across the mirror that stood in front of me, reflecting the endless darkness that surrounded the space. It really is dark around here. Not only was it dark, but it was also quiet. Eerily so. At least, that was until a certain voice echoed in my ears. Why did you let yourself be taken over? A pair of deep yellow eyes gazed in my direction. Blending into the darkness, Pebble looked up at me from the ground. If you had asked for my help, I would have been able to help you. I know. Pebble didn't need to remind me of this. I had willingly chosen to let myself be taken over. Although I still hadn't tried it yet, I was confident in taking the body back any time that I wanted. The resistive force that was placed on me wasn't very powerful. With the aid of Pebble, I was confident in getting out whenever I wanted. It was from the moment that I realized this that I willingly let myself be taken over. I wanted to find some time to properly study the seal that kept Julian in check. Perhaps I could find more clues about my situation by looking into it, like for example who had been the one to seal Julian. I had previously thought I had simply taken over Julian's body, but that no longer appeared to be the case. Someone purposely sealed the old Julian before allowing me to take over. The idea made my heart race. Who? Just who did this? The truth felt closer than ever, yet remained just out of reach. There was something that I was missing. A clue that would give me an idea of the one responsible for all of this. Are you not worried about what will happen now that someone else is controlling the body? Pebble seemed genuinely curious when asking this. It really did look like Pebble was worried about what my body would do now that I was no longer controlling it. The concern made me smile a little. You don't have to worry too much. Why? Do you know how long it took for Leon to figure out that I wasn't the real Julian? No? Pretty much within a few moments. It was right after I took the entrance examination. All he did was look at me before pointing his sword at me. He pointed his sword at you? Oh yeah. He almost tried to kill me. I could still vividly recall the cold expression he had back then, as if he was ready to devour me. I was somehow able to bullshit my way into him thinking that I was stronger than him. Which I now was. Still, it was the fact that he noticed immediately that set me at ease. If he could figure it out back then, I was certain he could do it now. As long as he was there, I had no reason to worry about what was happening in the outside world. Pebble looked slightly puzzled by what I had shared, but there was no time to linger on the past. Looking around, I stretched my hands. We don't have much time. Let's figure out if there's anything worth learning. In the meantime, contact Almighty and tell it to go to Leon. Pebble blinked its eyes in confusion, opening its mouth to mumble. But didn't you say that he would figure it out? I did. Then? Have you seen his face? Leon's? Yes. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you see it? That it looks to Pia. Realization dawned on Pebble, and I smirked. See? Okay. Without asking anything further, Pebble closed its eyes and connected with Almighty. Oh wait, it was right when Pebble was about to make contact with Almighty that I recalled something and stopped him. There's something else that I need you to tell Almighty. Something else? Tell Almighty to pretend it doesn't know me. What are you planning? Pebble frowned, clearly curious about what I planned on doing. Just do that for now. I just smiled and turned my attention to the mirror in front of me, slowly reaching out to touch its surface with the palm of my hand. Perhaps, the instant my hand met the mirror, a cool sensation washed over my mind, sending a shiver down my spine. I might not have to use the mirror to take care of this situation. And my world shifted. Clank. Julian entered the room that was supposed to belong to him. While he was unfamiliar with his surroundings, it didn't take a genius to understand how the academy was structured. Additionally, he had a basic understanding of his bonus actions while he remained trapped in the mirror. Though he didn't know the situation perfectly, he had time. But first things first. He hasn't been slacking off. Julian balled his fists and then relaxed them, sensing the untamed power pulsing within him. It was unlike anything he had ever had before. If he wanted to, Julian felt like he could shatter the table with just a light tap. Not bad, not bad. His lips curled into a nasty smile. This is a lot better than I thought. Ha ha ha. Laughing quietly, Julian shifted his attention towards the main desk where he spotted several books and newspapers. He calmly walked towards the table and picked up one of the papers. The Rise of the Twin Stars of the Ivinus Household. The Twin Stars? It doesn't sound too bad. Julian frowned as he stared at the paper, which displayed an image of him and Leon engaged in battle on a grand stage. The image contained colors, and there he could see Leon's eyes, which had turned completely black while his had turned yellow. Yellow? Julian's frown deepened and he hurriedly turned to face the nearest mirror. He was relieved to see that his eyes were normal. Why are my eyes yellow? Suddenly, Julian grew curious. Why were his eyes yellow? Was it some sort of skill? Picking up the paper, Julian went through it. It took him no longer than a few minutes of reading to finally grasp why his eyes had turned yellow. Concept? This wasn't the first time he had heard such a term. He had heard it before, but wasn't it something that was supposed to happen once one was about to create a domain? Could it be? Julian's eyes widened in realization as he felt his heart speed up. Just as he was about to test the concept, a cold breeze swept into the room from behind him. Frowning, Julian turned around and spotted a figure standing by the window. His entire body froze at the sight of her. Every hair on his body stood on end as his breath caught in his throat. Who? Julian inwardly mumbled, feeling the muscles in his body grow stiff. Who in the world is this? Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 416. Obsession 1. Every hair on Julian's body stood on end. The moment Julian saw the figure standing before her, he was left breathless. Not only because her looks eclipsed that of anyone he had ever seen before, but because her presence felt overwhelming. He tried to find his voice, but a heavy weight bore down on him, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. Julian could only remain silent while she stared at him from the other side of the room. What does she want? Did she figure something out? How can that be? All sorts of thoughts ran through Julian's mind as sweat poured from the side of his face. He had purposely kept the conversation short with the others in order to not arouse any suspicion. Was even that not enough? Do you have it? Her voice, soft and crisp, filled the room. Julian could feel the sweat trickling down his back as he processed her words. Have it? Have what? Still, the fact that she didn't downright say anything about him meant that she might have not figured anything out. That's good. That's good. Julian felt a flicker of relief as he gathered himself. Lifting his chin to meet her gaze, he shook his head. I don't. You don't? A strange tension suddenly plunged the entire room. This took Julian aback. Crap. Did I answer wrong? His chest felt heavy once more. In spite of all of this, he managed to keep himself composed. This was despite his legs feeling like jelly. Julian had no other choice but to keep himself composed. I see. Delilah lowered her head, her voice softening. The tension that lingered across the room vanished, leaving Julian confused. Is it me, or does she look disappointed? He blinked his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. However, taking note of her slightly dropping shoulders and expression, he realized that she really did seem disappointed. But why? What could make her so disappointed? Did that bastard have some sort of important task that he needed to do for her? Julian didn't feel good about the situation. Her reaction only made things a lot more troublesome for him. But I have to say, she really does look pretty. He had noticed it before, but now that she seemed less imposing, Julian found himself drawn to her appearance in a way he couldn't ignore. From her flowing black hair and striking eyes to her perfectly symmetrical features, she resembled a being from another world. Her beauty so flawless it felt almost otherworldly. It made Julian feel a little tingly. She's even better looking than Evelyn. He started to feel tempted. It was unfortunate that she was too strong for him to tame. Perhaps in the future. Do you need anything else? But such thoughts were only for the future. For now, Julian needed to take care of a few important things like getting adjusted to his body again. HM? Delilah blinked her eyes, probably surprised by the question as she mumbled, "Do I need anything else?" "No, probably not." "Then why are you still here?" Julian frowned but held his words back. Taking a deep breath to calm himself down, he shifted his attention back toward the newspaper and books on the table. Concept. He once again started to think about the words written on the paper. I should be capable of it as well, right? From the newspaper, he was a Tier 4 mage on the verge of reaching Tier 5. Though Julian didn't fully grasp the depth of his newfound abilities, he felt confident he could wield them. Especially this intriguing concept that the parasite displayed with his body. But how exactly do I? Julian's thoughts came to a halt as he sensed a presence next to him. She's still here? His muscles tightened as he slowly turned his head, finding her face just inches from his, her eyes fixed on the paper he had been studying. Wow. Once again, Julian found himself captivated by her presence. His heart suddenly raced, and his mouth went dry all at once. Licking his lips, he lowered his head to see her fair hand moving across the papers and books. Seeing how comfortable she seemed next to him, a thought crossed his mind. Is it possible that the relationship between the parasite and her isn't normal? The thought made his heart skip a beat. All sorts of thoughts ran through his mind as the edges of his lips gently curled up. He suddenly felt the need to test his theory. Julian subtly shifted his gaze to her hand, feigning an attempt to reach for the same paper she held. He did so in a casual manner, enough to make his hand brush with hers. His thoughts were simple. If someone like her was fine with, "Don't touch me," a cold voice suddenly echoed across the room, paralyzing Julian on the spot. Stiffly turning his head, a pair of obsidian black eyes stared directly at him. Julian felt the air around him vanish, leaving him breathless, unable to form a single word. On the other hand, Delilah's gaze seemed cold. Touching the edge of her hand, she frowned. While looking at him, Julian just barely managed to force a few words out. "It was an accident." "Hm." Delilah merely nodded, taking a step away from him. She appeared a little different than before. Her expression was colder and in general, she looked a lot more distant. "So I was wrong." Her reaction told Julian all that he needed to know. And this made Julian happy. After all, this meant that he could tame her himself. Julian secretly licked his lips. One day, holding his impulses back, Julian's face relaxed. Turning his head to face the mysterious lady, he was suddenly surprised to see that she was gone. As though she was a ghost, she vanished from his sight. The sight left him confused, however. He was quick to recompose himself. Although he didn't know where she was, there was a chance that she was secretly observing him from the dark. He couldn't allow his mask to slip just yet. "Not yet." Concept. He mumbled quietly, taking a seat on the chair next to the table. Opening up a book related to it, he flipped through the pages. "Let's see. How exactly can I use it?" Flop. Julian was suddenly startled by the flapping sound of wings. Turning his head, a pair of deep eyes met his sight. Julian felt his entire body grow cold at the sight of those cold eyes. Before he could get his words out, the owl spoke. "I've completed my mission, Master." Delilah stood in silence in her office. Her expression was stiff while she stared at the palm of her hand. Staring at it, her brows tightly knit together. The feeling of repulsion still lingered in her mind. It hadn't been the first time for her to feel like this in the past, but this was the first time she felt like this with Julian. He never really made her feel repulsed in the past. In fact, it was the opposite. She wanted to. So why now? Because he didn't have chocolate? No, this wasn't the first time he didn't give her chocolate. It had happened before and she never really felt anything about it. Disappointed at most. So what suddenly made her feel so repulsed? Delilah thought about it for a few more minutes before eventually settling for an answer. Eyes. Yes, his eyes felt different. They no longer felt the same. Why? Delilah blinked her eyes, unable to understand the sudden change. Unfortunately, she didn't have too much time to dwell on the matter as her communication device vibrated. BTZZ. HM? Staring at the message, Her expression changed and she disappeared from the spot. This is not what I expected. As soon as my vision cleared, I was taken aback by the sight that greeted me. It was a familiar estate that I had been to not too long ago. It stood within the void, quiet and devoid of any life. Isn't this the same place your family owns? It is. I faintly nodded my head, glancing at the estate before me. It was a replica of what I had seen when I had been there. It almost made me feel like I was back except for the fact that there was no sky. Everything was still surrounded in black. Let's go in. Licking my lips, I decided to head into the building. Although I was confident in Leon figuring something out while I was inside of this world, there was no actual guarantee he would notice the thing. That was the worst-case scenario. Fortunately, I had backup plans. Nonetheless, I still didn't have much time to spare, considering that someone had the quest that was currently ongoing. The current Julian stood no chance against a Tier 4 opponent. He would die the moment he met him. As I entered the estate, the first thing that caught my attention was the open doors leading to the backyard. Beyond them, I could see the training grounds in the distance. What truly captured my attention were the numerous swords scattered across the ground. There were many of them, and as I approached the backyard, I noticed dried blood splattered across the ground. It was everywhere. What in the... I crouched down to pick up one of the swords, and my surprise deepened when I noticed how worn the hilt had become, as if it had been gripped countless times. Don't tell me he has been practicing the sword all this time. Was his obsession with the sword that intense? But why? Why was he so obsessed with the sword? How powerful is the inverted sky to manipulate him to this extent? It did dawn on me that the young Julian had been manipulated into becoming obsessed with the sword, but I didn't expect it to be to this extent. Even when he had completely lost his physical form, he continued to train with the sword. From the dried blood on the ground to the many worn-out swords strewn about, it felt as if all he did was practice with the sword. This didn't feel natural. This feels like the work of an extremely powerful emotive mage. Only someone like that could instill such a profound obsession in another person. But who? Who exactly? I found something. Pebble's voice broke me out of my thoughts. Lifting my head, Pebble stood in the distance holding onto a strange rectangular black object. From the distance, it looked like a strange device, but the moment I moved closer to it and took a good look at it, my entire body grew stiff. I reached out for the device, grasping it in my hands. As I felt the cool metal in my hand, a slight tremor ran through my fingers when I tapped the screen, which lit up moments later, revealing a home screen that was both familiar and strange. I took a deep breath to calm my mind. I tried to, but my breath betrayed me. Nah, it was no use. I couldn't calm myself down. From the familiar model to the same background and apps. This phone, it was the same one I had back before dying. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 417. Obsession 2. I took a deep and steady breath to calm my trembling mind. The shock from the situation settled down rather quickly as I analyzed the situation calmly. This is without a doubt my phone. From the model to the wallpaper, a simple white background with a quote in the middle that read, "Efforts never betray you." It was a quote that came from a book I particularly liked. Do you know what this is? Unknowingly, Pebble had climbed over my shoulder and looked down at the phone in my hand with a curious look. It's strange. So bright. Pebble reached out to touch the screen with its paw. It displayed a surprised expression the moment it noticed the screen change with just the touch of its paw. It changed. How peculiar, right? I waved Pebble's paw away from the screen and started to fiddle with it. Why is my phone here? And why would Julian of all people have it? No, before any of that, I tapped onto the screen again and pressed on the Images app. Would my old photos be there? I wanted to see them. Password? A keypad appeared right after clicking the app. I was surprised, considering that I had never placed such a restriction on my phone before. And since I hadn't done this before, I didn't know what sort of password I needed to input. Frowning, I stared blankly at the number pad for a few seconds. Then, after a little bit of thought, I decided to try something. I wasn't certain if it would work, but since this was the key code I typically used when needed, I hoped it would do the trick. Click. And it did. As the screen unlocked, granting me access to the phone, I felt a brief moment of disorientation, unsure of what to do next. As I scrolled through the pictures I hadn't seen in so long, my lips began to tremble. I tried my best to keep myself composed, but couldn't. From the familiar yet distant face to the work documents I hadn't looked at in ages, and then my brother's face appeared. He looked nothing like Maya's soft brown hair, a stark contrast to my dark ones. And his face carried a gentleness that mine never did, nowhere near as intimidating. Haha. Why did my chest hurt? I squeezed my cheeks and shook my head. Then, shifting my attention to one of the videos, I clicked on it. Are you recording? A familiar voice reached my ears. It was one that I hadn't heard in such a long time. I pressed my lips tightly to stop the trembling. Good. The video was dark. However, I could still distinctly recall the scene. A few flames lit up within the darkness, revealing a small cake resting between two hands beneath it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Emmett. Happy birthday to you. A song followed right after. I almost lost myself in the sight, imagining myself in the situation. My chest squeezed. What are you doing? Why aren't you blowing the candles? All right. I thought about blowing but stopped myself. I didn't want to blow it. Blowing it would mean I wouldn't see him again. No. Darkness plunged the phone, and the video ended. All that was left was a dark screen. I bit my lips, scrolling up to look at the next video. Good evening everyone, teachers, parents, friends, and most importantly, my fellow classmates. Haha. I looked to my right, toward Pebble while pointing at the screen. Look at this. Pebble remained quiet. I didn't really care and continued. This was his high school graduation speech. Look at him. He was all nervous about making a speech just before. Haha. He had made me practice the speech over and over again. He kept going on about forgetting. His lines saying stuff like, I don't remember the lines. I think I forgot them. Help me. I'm going to die. It suddenly started to become difficult to breathe. Pursing my lips, I shook my head. The video had ended. I couldn't get enough. I wanted to see more. And so I did. Stop recording me. Why are you recording me? Mary is a little lamb, Mary is a little lamb. Here. Listen to this joke. Look at that cow. This is too bitter. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to, but couldn't. It was as if the videos were stripping me away from my breath. Shit. And yet, I couldn't stop myself from watching them. I want that. Can you get me that? Something warm trickled down the side of my cheek, slowly tracing a path down my skin. My eyes started to sting, probably because I was forgetting to blink. But I didn't want to blink. It had just been so long. I'm scared. I suddenly paused at one of the videos. Why don't I remember this one? Noel's face was pale, and he sat on the opposite side of a wooden table. Why did you have to leave? No, what am I supposed to do, brother? His voice was frail, weak almost. I could hardly recognize it. Taking a closer look, his face was also pale, and his cheeks were sunken. What? Why did you leave me, brother? Tears streamed down Noel's face as he hugged his face with his arms. I can't live like this anymore. No, I want to die. I lost my breath. I was suddenly reminded of a certain vision in the past. It couldn't be that? But I can't die. I looked towards the screen. There, Noel took out a knife. I almost jumped out with fright. However, before I could even do a thing, he stabbed himself. In the neck. Bert. The very words that I was about to scream never left my mouth. I felt entirely stripped of my breath as I stood up abruptly. My entire body felt weak, my teeth chattering as I stared at the gruesome sight displayed on the screen. Noel, I can't die. Who? What? I looked at the screen. Extending his hand, Noel retrieved the knife from his neck. Bert. He then stabbed himself again. My eyes widened at the sight. Bert. But he didn't stop. Bert. He stabbed himself repeatedly, blood splattering across the screen as I shook my head in disbelief. No, what? Stop. The words just refused to leave my mouth. A scream echoed across the screen as Noel's eyes turned bloodshot. Die. Fucking die. Die. Let me fucking die. He continued to stab himself. My arms shook, the weight of the phone growing heavier by the second. Felt like it was slipping from my grasp, sinking lower and lower as I fought to hold on. Die. Noel's rampage didn't stop. He continued to stab himself while blood splattered all over him. And the screen. My chest squeezed tightly. But I couldn't do a thing. I was stuck, watching all of it unfold before my very eyes. I didn't want to look, yet I couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene before me. In particular, his wounds which were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Damn it. Dropping the knife, Noel covered his face with both of his hands. His body trembled while he started to sob. I can't keep this up. I know. I want to die, but I cannot die. My lips shook. You told me you would save me. What? You told me you would look for me. Look for you? I did everything you asked me to do. I played along. I showed you the game like you told me to. Had Camille make the artifacts like you told me to. Noel's eyes flicked to face the camera, his eyes turning completely bloodshot. Fucking did everything you told me to do. Wait, 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 wait. Where the fuck are you? Ah, you told me you would save me. Where are you? I can't keep doing this anymore. Noel's scream reverberated loudly, pierced through the screen, reaching me directly. You lied. You lied to me. You aren't coming to save me. If you did, you would have done so before. But you didn't. And yet, Noel suddenly bit his lips, his screams lowering as his chest trembled, his voice growing. Hoarse. Why do I keep doing what you tell me to do? Drip. A warm streak ran down Noel's eyes as he retrieved a small mirror. Moving towards the phone, he picked it up and inched his face closer to it. His face was now stained with tears. I don't understand. You never tell me anything. You told me this was for me, but I'm miserable. Come back. Biting his lips, Noel's voice trembled. I may not be able to die, but I can still feel pain. Ah, Noel swallowed hard. When they take my blood, I feel it. I'm like a tool for them. A tool to keep them alive. You said you would save me from them. Please hurry. I can't do this anymore. I stood frozen, gazing at the video as I tried to process Noel's words. My mind was blank, but at the same time, several pieces started to fall together. I don't know why you want me to record this video and put the phone inside the astral mirror, but I'll do it. What other choice do I have? I'm stuck and you're gone. Just... Blood began to seep from Noel's lips as he bit down too hard. Don't forget your promise. You need to come save me. I can't hold much longer. Brother. Noel took one last look at the mirror before it fell down and the screen turned black. A still silence took over the space as the video came to an end. Hey. Pebble's voice reached me from the right, but I couldn't pay attention. As my lips trembled, realization dawned on me. The reason why I'm here into this world, and the one behind everything that is happening to me is me, Heraclius, the one who sees the past, present, and future. I had seen it all back then. Everything that I was doing was for Noel, to keep the promise, to save him. My mind blanked, and I lowered to stare at the phone. It all suddenly started to make sense to me. I don't know why you want me to record this video and put the phone inside the astral mirror, but I'll do it. Noel's words echoed in my mind once more. I understood now. The phone turned off. Wanted my current self to see it, to make me understand. I knew, I had planned. Had seen. The Seer. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 418. Obsession 3. My mind suddenly felt clear. 11. Rather than being shocked, surprised, or overwhelmed by the realization, I only felt a strange clarity wash over my mind. It was strange, but it almost felt like everything was falling into place. So this is how it is. I closed my eyes and took a small breath. There's still a lot of things that don't make sense, but I'm sure I'll understand soon enough. I glanced at the phone in my hand. I felt tempted to replay the video, but thinking back to how gruesome it was, I decided against it. The message was already clear to me. What I truly wanted to know was where Noel was. He was still alive, I was sure of it. Somewhere out there, he was waiting for me to save him. But from what? He did say they. Could he be referring to the other gods? The more I thought about the situation, the more complex it seemed to me. I just didn't have enough information to figure it out. But that was fine. I was clearly not yet ready to hear everything. I took another deep breath and switched off the phone. As I did, I felt a pair of eyes staring at me from my right side. I turned to see Pebble looking at me with an intense look. You have a lot of secrets, human. I smiled. I know. A lot of the secrets were some that I only just came to learn about. There were plenty more that I still needed to unearth. However, the picture started to form inside my mind. I could see the light at the end of the long and dark tunnel. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more before I figured everything out. Yeah, just a little bit more. Brushing my hair back, I put the phone away and picked up one of the worn-out swords scattered across the ground. Swoosh, swoosh, they felt rather light. I swung it a few more times before casually glancing at Pebble's way. How is the situation with Almighty going? He has made contact with the target. MHM. Perfect. I nodded and swung the sword a few more times. I guess I have to wait now. Swoosh, swoosh. It was almost time. Almost time for me to take my body back. Julian swallowed nervously as he gazed at the owl before him. Although it appeared to be an ordinary owl, he felt a heavy pressure emanating from it. The intensity of its stare left him feeling paralyzed. He was only able to come to himself after hearing its words. Master? Was it just him, or did the owl just call him? Master, are you okay? HM? I am. Julian hurriedly put on a facade and nodded faintly. I was busy studying this. He casually pointed at the book he was reading. The one about concepts. The owl gave the paper a brief, uninterested glance before perching itself calmly on the wooden desk. I have completed the mission that you have asked me to complete. Mission? Julian held his question back and just nodded. Report to me on it. Yes. Almighty nodded curtly, almost acting like a butler. The sight of the bird's compliance brought a thin smirk over Julian's lips. I wonder how that parasite managed to get a servant like this? The bird looks quite useful. The target remains inside the Church of Chlora. I've observed him watching Caius on multiple occasions, but he hasn't made a move yet. I suspect he might take action soon. Caius? Who is Caius? And who exactly was targeting him? Julian felt his head throb a little at the sudden piece of information but kept his face straight. I see. Have you gotten a look at his strength? Yes, it's as reported. Tier 4. Tier 4? Wasn't that the same as his current body? Julian suddenly felt his body twitch. He wanted to see the capabilities of his new body. Could he deal with a Tier 4? Surely he could. No, not yet. Just barely. Julian managed to hold himself back. He needed to figure out this entire concept system before testing his powers through real combat. Yes, the target is Tier 4. For now, their only target is Caius. They have yet to show any interest towards you, Master. Me? Julian blinked his eyes, his composure faltering slightly. However, Julian was quick to recompose himself as he nodded himself. I see, so I'm also one of the targets. The itch Julian previously felt intensified. He found himself slowly clenching his fists. Yet again, he had to force himself to calm down. Not yet. Is there anything else? No. The owl replied. This is all for now. I understand. You may go. Julian pretended to be casual as he leaned back against the chair. He silently drummed his fist against the wooden table. He had half expected the owl to fly away, but to his surprise it stayed, its eyes fixed on him. With an unwavering intensity. The owl's gaze made Julian grow nervous. Did it figure something out? Why aren't you leaving? Leave? The owl blinked. Where? Does it not just leave once he's done? Julian frowned but kept his cool. Yes, go and continue monitoring the target. Come back to me if you notice anything else. Understood, Master. The owl spread its wings, preparing to take flight. Just before it left, it shot a brief, almost imperceptible glance at Julian's hand. The gesture was subtle, but Julian caught it, lowering his gaze to where the owl had directed its attention. That was when he noticed an inconspicuous black ring resting on his finger. A ring? Julian was surprised. He had already noticed the ring before but didn't pay much attention to it since it looked like a regular ring. Could there be a secret to the ring he didn't know about? Julian's curiosity sparked, but before he could voice his question, the owl had already disappeared, leaving him with only his thoughts and the lingering gaze on his hand. Julian frowned in annoyance. He felt curious about the ring, but without properly knowing what it did, he didn't want to carelessly test it. He'll worry about it later. There was something else he was more curious about. Rising from his seat, Julian calmly approached the plain mirror mounted on the wall, his reflection staring back at him. Holding onto the book about concepts, Julian glanced at his reflection while reciting, there are 3 steps to forming a domain: intent, concept, and materialization. Intent is deeply personal, shaped by the bearer's own experiences, and once formed, it cannot be altered. Pausing, Julian closed his eyes and thought back to the newspaper. An emotional-based intent. That's how the newspaper described the parasite's intent, one that directly alters his physical attributes through the emotion he chooses to embody. Each shift in eye color signifies a distinct emotion, triggering corresponding changes in his body. Closing his eyes, Julian suddenly saw 6 orbs appear in his mind. I see them. Julian took a step forward, walking towards the 6 orbs that floated in front of him. Beneath them, he could see the different names belonging to each orb. Rage, fear, joy, throb. They throbbed as he neared them. Julian felt his entire body tingle upon feeling the throb. He reached his hand towards the red orb. Rage. A concept, on the other hand, is the evolution and refinement of the intent, transforming it into something more structured and adaptable, ultimately reaching the point where materialization becomes possible. The orb throbbed once more. Julian felt his entire body quiver as the muscles beneath his skin squirmed and popped, power surging through him like a storm. Haha! Julian started to laugh, feeling a euphoria from the sudden increase in strength. Yes, this. Haha! Opening his eyes, Julian caught a glimpse of his eyes, which were slowly turning red. The power in his body started to accumulate, and as he clenched his fist, he almost felt like he shattered the wall with a simple tap. Now this, he looked down at his arms which were bulging. This is what I call power. Julian laughed again and closed his eyes. He started to feel invincible. So much so that he suddenly had the itch to target the person whom the owl was targeting. I wonder who would win between the two of us if we fought. Seeing the 6 orbs that appeared in front of him, Julian prepared to fully integrate with the red orb that stood in front of him. He wanted to see just how powerful he would become once he fully integrated with it, and CR crack. What would happen if he integrated with the other orbs? This is GRA. Julian let out a weird sound all of a sudden. As Julian stared at his outstretched hand, coated in a thick, viscous red liquid, his mind went blank and he suddenly lost all control over his body. Cage. The orbs before him suddenly throbbed and trembled. What? Julian was suddenly engulfed by a wave of pain as his chest constricted and his muscles tightened. Yuka. The red coating on his hand began to shift, transforming into a deep purple hue, and Julian was abruptly engulfed by a wave of weakness. It felt as though every ounce of energy had been drained from his body. What is going on? Panic started to spread over Julian's mind. The orbs around him shook. He looked at them in horror, watching as they all turned purple. As Julian took a step back, the weakness gripping his body intensified, threatening to pull him down further. His chest burned and his mind shook. His eyes widened as he watched the orbs before him suddenly drop to the ground. Splash, splash. The orbs burst upon hitting the ground, scattering droplets of purple liquid everywhere. Before Julian could react, the purple droplets began to wriggle, transforming into slender hands that emerged from the ground and reached out toward him. Julian tried to move back, but the hands grasped his ankles tightly. He found himself unable to move. 11. Before he could do anything else, even more hands appeared, reaching out for his body and pulling him down. Leave me alone. Julian attempted to move, but his body wouldn't respond. More hands materialized, grasping for his shoulders, neck, and every exposed part of him. In an instant, he was engulfed by a mass of purple hands. He was stuck. His eyes abruptly opened. Light returned to his eyes and his reflection appeared in front of him. That was when he saw it. His eyes, they were purple. And from one of his eyes, several dozen purple hands emerged, clawing desperately to escape. Julian's mind blanked at the scene. But soon he realized what had happened. Intent. He had found his own intent. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 419. Obsession. 4. Yuk. Julian covered half of his face with his hand while he hunched over. Purple hands began to claw out of his eye while a searing pain invaded his mind. The pain was unlike anything he had ever felt, but the power that came along with the pain was something that Julian couldn't get enough of. More. I want more. Julian raised his head to stare at his own reflection. His eyes, they were both purple, and his hands clawed out of his right eye. Something splashed on the ground beneath him. It was a purple film that expanded with every second. The purple film slowly started to cover the ground around him, turning it into a dark purple hue. From the shifting purple film, twisted faces and clawing hands emerged, screaming and grasping for anything within their reach. A strained laugh escaped Julian's lips as he witnessed the sight with a strange smile on his face. More. Julian felt like he could cover every inch of the room. He had the sense that if he went through with it, had accomplished something the parasite had never been able to reach. While the parasite had managed to develop a concept, Julian felt he could progress to the materialization stage. This was his body. His experience wasn't inferior to an annoying parasite. The degree of control he had over it was also far greater than that parasite's. His mind felt lucid and he started to feel invincible. It only made sense that he achieved better than the parasite. Right, it only makes sense in better. Thud. Julian collapsed to his knees. His back hunched as more and more hands clawed their way out from his eye, each one pulling him further into agony. Saliva flew out of his mouth as the purple film beneath him expanded further. More. His chest felt like exploding. The veins at the side of his head bulged while he lost his breath. He could hardly breathe. He felt suffocated. And yet, he found joy in the pain and suffering. This was nothing compared to the suffering he had undergone within that world. The imprisonment he felt was just as suffocating, if not worse. He poured all of that experience into whatever was developing before him. At this moment, for some strange reason, he felt like he could accomplish anything. He didn't know why, but he took advantage of it. Yes, I want more. A crazed look flashed across his face and the film expanded further, slowly inching towards the walls and moving up. Sweat poured down from the side of his face. Just a little. Just a PFTT. Julian quickly clasped his hand over his mouth, feeling something warm and wet trickle through the gaps between his fingers. Drip. Drip. Looking down, Julian caught a glimpse of the red that stained the ground and the realization hit him. He had reached his limits. Haha. Rather than being disheartened, he just laughed. Yeah, this is good. This is good. He closed his eyes. Julian felt it. He was close to reaching the materialization stage. This domain thing. He laughed again. It's a lot easier than I thought. Was he just that talented? No, it felt more than just talent. It felt more like an accumulation of all his resentment and anger while trapped within that world, suddenly manifesting before his very eyes. With his body having reached the prerequisite to form a domain, it all came flooding out at once. To talk. A sudden knock on the door jolted Julian out of his thoughts. In spite of the pain that was currently invading his mind, Julian managed to help himself up and head for the door. To talk. Whoever they were, they seemed relentless. Coming. Julian rubbed the back of his head while reaching out for the doorknob to open the door. Clank. 11. That was when a familiar figure appeared. Here. It was none other than Linus. He appeared to be holding onto a letter which he quickly handed to him. It had the family stamp on it, showing that it had been directly sent by the family. Read this on your own. It's important. Usually, letters were used when sharing confidential information. Otherwise, communication devices were the norm. The fact that it had been personally handed to him also showed just how important it was. Julian reached out for the letter and glanced at it before looking back at Linus. He didn't even look at him in the eyes. Scared? Taking a closer look, he could see Linus' shoulders shaking. It almost gave off the impression that he was scared, but Julian could see no fear in his eyes. It was more like he's holding himself back. Julian suddenly felt the corner of his lips pull. Isn't that cute? Thank you. Linus' brows furrowed. He looked like he wanted to say something, but held himself back. Julian noticed this and cocked his head. Is there something wrong? No, nothing. Linus took a deep breath to calm himself down. He forced a smile and raised his head to finally look at Julian. That was when their eyes met. Ha! Julian observed Linus' chest tremble the moment their eyes locked. He couldn't miss the deep-seated hatred lurking in Linus' gaze, visible even as his brows furrowed tighter. Julian continued, Are you sure? He innocently blinked his eyes and gestured for Linus to come in. It looks like you want to tell me something. Come on, come in. No, I'm good. I insist, Linus. It's been so long since. No, stop. Oh, come on. We haven't seen each other for so long. Why don't you come in? No, I want take in. I said no. Linus suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice echoing through the air and plunging the entire surroundings into an eerie silence. Nah. Linus' chest rose and fell rapidly as he locked eyes with Julian. He shook his head in frustration, his expression tightening before he clenched his teeth. You don't listen, do you? He took a step forward. You never have, never did, and never will. Linus spat, his voice dripping with contempt. I don't know how you managed to fool the entire academy into believing you're some kind of prodigy worth praising, but I know the real you. He pointed his finger directly at Julian. You're a fucking scum. Whatever mask you're wearing, that shit won't fool me. I know what you're capable of. I've seen it all. Linus forcefully pointed at his temple. You're going to burn everything down. You're a monster. You haven't changed. You're just acting like you have. He'll rip that mask off you if it's the uckle. Before Linus could continue, a hand shot out and grabbed his face. He struggled against the hold, but the grip was far too strong for him to break free. Oh. Julian silently laughed, his facade crumbling as he looked at Linus. You're right. A deep smile marred Julian's features as his eyes turned purple. As Julian locked eyes with Linus, purple hands began to emerge from his right eye, clawing their way out. I haven't changed. I'm the same me. Laughing, Julian brought Linus' face closer. You came at the right time. I was in desperate search of someone to help me practice this new concept thing. Linus' eyes widened. However, before he could put up any resistance, his body grew limp. Clank. He was shortly after pulled into the room, plunging the corridors of the dormitory into a strange silence. A silence that was shattered by the single sound of a step. Appearing at the far end of the corridor, Aoife held her mouth with her hand. What did she just see? You're saying that the current Julian is possessed? Yes. Leon eyed the peculiar owl perched on the wooden bench beside him. After scanning his surroundings a couple of times to ensure no one was watching. He leaned in slightly and spoke. Again, his voice barely above a whisper. I already know this much. The owl looked confused. His gaze seemed to say, you knew? How? I didn't tell you? Leon shook his head. The changes were quite obvious to him. He tried a little too hard to be indifferent. However, despite his best attempts, he'd break on several occasions. Julian wouldn't do that. One of his greatest qualities was that he could maintain a poker face in any situation. Furthermore, he couldn't even tell I was speaking to him through my eyes. Julian just nodded faintly at him. It was then that Leon understood everything. He thought about acting up on his suspicions, but held himself back. He wanted to observe the situation better. And it wasn't like he was 100% sure his assumptions were correct. At least that was until now. With the owl telling him directly, Leon was sure of his previous hunch. Especially since he knew the owl belonged to Julian. Leon took a deep breath and looked at the owl pitifully. That sick monster. The owl cocked its head, but Leon didn't say anything else. Is that why my intuition was flaring up so much? He had more or less guessed this part. It was just that he didn't think the situation was over. Just yet. There hadn't been many times in the past where he had felt such a strong kick from his innate skill. Leon understood that this was merely the start. Something worse was going to happen, and he had to be ready for that. At least I now know what the source of the situation is. Leon wasn't quite sure how to feel about that. If his guesses were correct, the one who had taken over Julian's body was probably the old Julian. It also started to make sense why he had asked to contact Evelyn privately. They probably tried to find a way to solve the situation, but it evidently didn't work or backfired. Leon tapped his fingers rhythmically on the wooden bench, lost in thought. The deeper he delved into the situation, the more he felt a headache coming. He couldn't necessarily ask for help considering how delicate the situation was. Furthermore, with the gathering of the 7 churches still underway, everyone was being closely monitored by the academy staff. He couldn't move carelessly. What should I do? What should I keep watch of him? Leon turned to face the owl. Finding himself staring into its deep eyes, Leon paused momentarily. Keep W. Yes, he wants you to keep watch of him. Prevent him from doing anything stupid with the bot. Wait. Leon held up his hand to stop the owl. Are you in contact with Julian? Yes. Leon's lips trembled for a brief moment. Collecting himself, he frowned. Wait, that doesn't make sense. How are you? It doesn't matter how. Just know that I am. He told me to tell you this information. The owl suddenly expanded its wings and flapped them once, floating into the air. I have other things to do, human. Wait. Despite Leon's effort to reach out to the owl, he could do nothing but watch as it silently vanished from his sight. Damn it. Leon cursed silently while holding onto his forehead. That owl, it has definitely learned the wrong things from Julian. He felt like strangling both. And just when he thought things couldn't get any worse. Hi. A pair of gray eyes appeared next to him.